Welcome to The Bold Blueprint, a podcast for modern educators who dare to think differently. Here we explore the intersection of education and leadership, diving into bold strategies, innovative teaching, and the mindset shifts that drive real impact. Whether you're in the classroom, leading a team, or shaping the future of education, this is your space to learn, grow, and lead with confidence. Barbi 2025, September, spring has sprung, and I have to tell you, the weather is beautiful. How are you?
Yeah, for everyone listening, you're up. I'm going to say Gold Coast. Am I getting it right?
You're totally getting it right. It's all about the
Okay.
beach and the farmers markets on a Saturday.
And I'm in
That's
Sydney, which has been, you're lucky you've left. It's been, I feel like, the wettest year we've had ever.
really,
Um, so you may say spring. I'm looking at clouds. I think we get a cold front coming tomorrow. Like, but otherwise, yes, it's lovely.
wow. Yeah, I today's podcast, for those who are listening and or watching on YouTube, we have another really special guest by the name of Stefan, who is the director of the Jarra Property Group. And I think it's really interesting with the guests that we're going to have today, Barbi, because we've had a lot of guests around practice. Around play, we had Chelsea, a center manager. We've had people who really influence the pedagogy and practice in a center. We're kind of deviating and pivoting a little bit with our guests. So, with Stefan coming on today, we're going to be thinking about early childhood facilities in the way it's designed from an idea, the way it is structured, but also when educators go into a service and they work in that team and have children that are invited into a service, where did the ideas come from? And when we're thinking about functionality and even walking through the lobby and seeing what that looks like, how does that flow and where are those concepts and those designs actually stemming from? So, Barbi, I'm so excited to be welcoming Stefan to today's podcast.
Excellent. Thanks, Jamie. Great to be here. You guys are talking about the weather in Sydney and Gold Coast. I'm in Perth. I think we've had probably the wettest winter in about a decade. So just finished a grand final for football and most of the ovals are completely mud-filled and disgusting. So I'm sitting here with a sore quad,
Oh, no.
just trying to recover. And great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
You know what's really interesting, Stefan, because I've known you for a little while, is that you didn't start your career in designing and property development, did you? You started as a high school teacher, is that right?
Yeah, so pretty interesting sort of setup for running a commercial development company in WA called Jarra. I was a school teacher since 22 until early 30s. So I taught senior biology, and that was straight from school, straight to uni, straight into teaching, and then into commercial property. Just the standard way that you get to it.
Yeah, biology, commercial property.
Yeah,
I did all the stuff.
yeah,
So
yeah. So yeah, 10 years of teaching probably I'd say 13-year-olds to 18-year-olds, and biology is a bit of a shift. But yeah, I think it's helped a little bit for getting into childcare, and that's probably where some of my background has potentially helped, I think.
you know what, Jamie? We did have Freya Lucas on a few episodes ago who talked about just what you do in your career path. Like it's not all linear. I also like her comment, you're not a tree, you can move, but something even as high school teacher biology, shift over to property, like we can just do those type of things.
To be honest, Barbie, I think it's not so much from my perspective. I'm not sure how much teaching has helped me in commercial property, but I think going the other way around, like some of the best teachers that I worked with didn't go straight from school to university and then into teaching. Some of the best teachers and the ones that the kids sort of had the best rapport with were some people that had another focus before they went into teaching and had some real world experience. I think that's really important. Although,
You're talking our language. I mean,
yeah,
I've worked in the outside of school hours sector for many a year, and so has Barbie as well. And I think you get amazing educators who I used to have some mining students who would work in the space, and the services that I managed were in Coogee in Sydney, which is near UNSW, where university students would go and study whatever field that they were looking for, and as a side hustle, they would go and work in an outside of school hours care service. And the what they would bring to the service was quite magical, actually.
Yeah,
yeah,
I found
and yeah, yeah, it's definitely what I've seen. Just in that education field, some the experience that people bring from other sectors, I think is really important.
I actually probably did a flip of that. When I was at uni, I just realized I didn't work in the profession. I did primary teaching myself, but I worked in construction and engineering whilst at university. Like I worked at a lot of major project teams and all that. For the opposite, it's completely opposite to my training. But I know when in out of school hours care, like Jamie, I had a lot of uni students, law and everything, and they tend to, my best educators, they're all great, tend to be the ones that were studying something the opposite,
Mm.
because it wasn't like they were just doing the same thing 24/7. Their uni and their work was kind of completely different worlds in regards to the study, the interest areas, and what it gave them. And I guess their cup feeling, if it sounds cliche in that sense, but yeah.
So curious, Stefan. Like you said that you're the director and owner of Jarra Group. Can you tell us a little bit about who is Jarra and what is Jarra about, and where did it
Yeah,
come
so Jarra was set up around 2019. Mike Cameron and myself,
from?
we're a bit of a combination. Mike in our team is very good from the financial point of view. His background is numbers and spreadsheets, something that I'm probably not that good at. My background, like we said, is teaching and always being interested in property whilst I was teaching, and it was just, I suppose, a bit of a passion or something that I was interested in since I was at high school myself, and just started getting involved in residential property and subdivisions and those sorts of things. And then one of my good friends from school, he went straight from school into the field, and I was always interested in it. And I remember him saying to me one day, "Look, you could do it. Like, there's no reason you couldn't." And in 2016, I left teaching and started in that field, and we did a little bit of sort of work with fuel stations, sort of 2015, 2016. And then everyone started buying EVs, and we decided we probably shouldn't stick in that field. And just, it wasn't any sort of specific reason that we got involved in childcare development. It was just something that we landed in the space. We developed a centre in the south of Perth for a national operator, and just it sort of came to us, and I felt comfortable in the space, and we've spent a lot more time in that childcare development space, and developed sort of 30 plus centres in WA and a few nationally, and looking to expand nationally at the moment with our new group ELC and our Jarra Childcare Trust. So yeah, really excited about it, and it's just been a bit of a growth journey over the last 5 or 6 years. But yeah, really excited, and our focus primarily is just childcare right now.
So 30 plus centres that you've developed over X amount of years. I mean, I'm sure you would have had some lessons learnt.
Yeah,
What are
yeah,
the
definitely.
what are the couple of the lessons you've learnt over the years?
I suppose it's which angle you're coming from. I mean, from our perspective, we've learned everything from which builders to use, which builders not to use, architects to use, how important the play space is to a childcare centre, because you need to get your licensing at the end of the process, and everything comes down to getting that final license, and your play space is a really important component to that.
Yeah.
But we've also learned a little bit along the way of, listening to the experts, listening to the educators and the people that are actually running the centres. Look, we've developed 30 childcare centres and or 30 plus, and we would like to think we know a little bit about it, but we're not educators. And although I was a school teacher, I'm definitely not a childcare early learning teacher. So we rely on the educators and the people that actually know what they're doing to tell us what they want. Probably the biggest error that we've made, and a lot of other developers make in this space, is they think it's just a cookie cutter approach where they can go and get themselves an approval for a childcare centre and then go, oh, we'll just go find a childcare operator. It's not something we've done even since the start, as we always looked for a quality operator that knew what they were doing and listened to them and said, what do you want? And we sort of backed them to say, you know what you're doing, we're comfortable with you, so you tell us what you want and we'll deliver it for you.
That's good. I think on the outside, a lot of people can just make this assumption you're all one and part the same sometimes in how it flows. Not that actually there are people that do the design side and pick and choose. Like we do recruitment and we pick and choose. We don't just say yes because you need someone. It sounds like you're quite reflective in how you do it as well over at Jarra.
Yeah. Look, the process is it's not just as simple as a childcare operator going along to a developer and saying, hey, I want a centre here. There's a lot that goes behind it. You've got to find the site. It's got to be in an area that actually there's demand. There's been a lot of centres that are put in areas where there doesn't actually need a childcare centre there. So that's something that at Jarra we spend a lot of time. We have to become comfortable with the site along with the operator that we're working with. And then there's a lot of people that go into it. So to get an approval, you need an architect, you need to tick off acoustic, you need to get it through your council, you need play space, internal design, lots of different aspects that go into it. And then you need to actually deliver it with a good builder at the end. So a lot of things that can go wrong before you can get kids in there, and good educators making sure that there's quality of care.
That's really interesting, because educators who are applying for a role because they may have seen an ad on Seek and showed up for an interview and walked through the doors and met that centre manager may not think about all of the things that go into that experience even happening.
There's a lot. There's a lot of time. And a lot of these centres, even if you can do it efficiently and you tick all the boxes and everything falls into place, from finding a site to actually opening the doors and parents dropping their kids off, it's minimum 2 years usually, minimum.
I actually wanted to ask something on that. I was writing it down as you're talking about there, but the finding the site, I've noticed as I'm talking to different providers, some of the quirky, unique or innovative ways people do actually find sites. It's not just like, oh, there's the site they build. I don't know if you want to give away all the secrets or if you want to share
I'm
any.
happy to. I'm happy to give any secrets away. To be honest, it depends on the area. If I don't know an area well, then we're relying on other experts that will say, look, we think this is a good site. There's some obvious things that you're looking for: exposure, close to shopping centres, close to primary schools is a pretty obvious one. And then how much other supply is actually in the area. So all of those things can combine. When I first got involved and left teaching and got into this space, that was probably the most exciting when we're looking for sites. Is I used to go to areas. I remember one of the ones my wife told me. She said one of her friends from school was living in an area called Piara Waters, and there was. I think she said there was 13 kindy streams in the primary school. So it's a growth area in Perth, and 13 streams in the one kindy class. And I said, oh, well, then let me have a look how many childcare centres there were. And there wasn't really any. So I remember just spending days and weeks driving around the suburb in Piara Waters, and we actually found 2 centres. One was a Nido and one was a Greenleaves, and they're both operating now and full from what I understand. So that was a real basic sort of simple thing. We worked out that there was a huge demand. Some other areas you could just identify that the numbers and the demographics looked like they needed childcare centres. And when I first got into it, I was always very nervous and didn't know whether there was the right spot or not. So I used to go a bit strange, but I'd go to the parks and have a chat to mums and say, hey, like, where do you send? Do you mind having a chat? Where do you send? Are you looking for a childcare centre? Where is it? I remember going to one area and had a chat to one of the mums. She said, "Oh, well, there's nothing around here. I'm going to have to send, my child over to this area, which was kilometres away." So, yeah, I mean, nowadays I don't get into the weeds that much. You sort of get a bit of a feel for it. But there's a lot of different aspects that come into it. Some of it's obvious and some of it's just a bit of a gut feel thing. And then you've got to rely on the operators that actually know what they're doing. And if they say they want to be in an area, then, and they're a good operator, then it's probably worth listening to them.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go Jamie.
Oh, no, you go, Barbi. Sorry.
Oh, no, I just feel like as I'm hearing Stefan, so I know I always studied primary teaching, worked with kids for a bit as well, and then worked in mostly construction engineering at uni. I always wanted to do architecture, be a town planner, but then I still envision wherever I go now, and I don't run any services or do anything, but I do exactly what Stefan was describing of locations, especially if I'm visiting it anywhere. I'm thinking, where's the childcare and how do you get from A to B in primary school? I feel like I'm in the wrong side of this profession.
It's cool. And even you can do it. You can do anything.
Especially when suburbs in Sydney gentrify, and it completely changed what the suburb might have looked like when I was 20 to now at 40. It's so different, and just seeing what it could and couldn't be. But that's that's my own personal
It's an interesting point because I mean my sort of, and we're sort of talking about it from just a location point of view rather than the design. I'm sure we'll get to that, but my headspace has gone more into that. I think there's an opportunity to find areas where, the childcare centres are 20, 30 years old. They need refreshers. It's very difficult to get a centre into that area. Look, it's pretty easy to work out that within a growth area, it's a new subdivision, you're going to need childcare. The problem is that everyone else thinks exactly the same thing, and so do the operators. So I'm a little bit nervous these days at looking at those growth areas and just plopping another childcare centre in there. It has to have something about it. It can't just be, there's 2,000 square metres here. It's a growth area. Let's just put a childcare centre in it. There's got to be something more to it. Is it next to the primary school? There's a bit of debate around some parents don't like being on a main road, but look, from our perspective, there is something about being visible within a catchment because mums and dads drive past it every day. They then are having a kid and, they say, well, that's easy. I'm going to go and book a tour for that centre. And if you're running a good centre and you get, mum and dad to book a tour, then you'd hope that they come into your centre and put their child there because you'll back yourself in. So those sorts of things are pretty important. But look, growth areas are simple. I think there's a huge opportunity in some of those areas as long as they're not, gentrified too much that there isn't kids in the area. I think they're always in a lot of those areas there still is, and I think what ends up happening is there hasn't been a new centre put in those areas because it's difficult for developers and operators to actually make it work. So there's a huge opportunity in that space, I think.
It'd be affordability. Like my daughter's school, she's in kindy. There's only 3 kindy classes when you're talking about 13.
Well, that's pretty unusual. That one's unusual.
But it's gone down about 200-300 children in only a couple of years because affordability. We have a lot of development. I'm sitting in all these units and there's plenty more going up around me. But the people that can afford them aren't young families as well. So there's that huge mark in there.
Really tough space. And, if we actually kind of come back just a little bit, Stefan, really interested to hear your perspective about design. Because I know myself and Barbi, we've worked in the sector forever, and well, not forever, we're not that old, but we're like age fine wine. When educators go into a building, they want to also work in a space because it's their workspace. We want children to be able to enter a building that feels good and it looks good, and families as they're doing a tour and seeing a building that actually makes sense and comes across safe. I know that I've actually walked some of the buildings that you've designed, and I was quite impressed with some of the concepts that you thought through, and I'd be really interested for you to share some of those tips.
Yeah, look, they're not, to be honest, they're not my concepts. I mean, we probably work with 5, 6, 7 different architects. Some operators have their own architects. We we work with them, or we select some of the architects that we know know the space really well. I suppose, look, you're hard pressed to find a new centre these days that isn't creating good spaces for kids. I think, there'll be some where developers just go in and they'll just put something together and just try and find an operator last minute. That's always going to happen, and there's always going to be people that come into the space and they're just looking to make money and not really looking to work closely with the operator. But there's less of that, and I think that it's not successful anymore. We listen to our operators; they are always looking to get really good environments for the children, and then when parents go in there, there's that bit of a wow factor. So look, there's some operators at the moment, there's some national ones, there's some ASX listed ones that are doing some amazing stuff. You walk into some of these centres and it's like walking into a flash hotel. There's some polished concrete and brass fittings, and look, I see the appeal to it, and I could see how that's something that works. We sort of maybe have lent a little bit into what is something that works for the educators and attracts good quality educators to the centre. And some of the operators that we've been working with, in particular Bloom over in Perth, one of their big policies is heaps of storage. They want to make sure that it's really easy, lots of storage, and that's what their educators want. I'm big on making sure that my staff rooms that I put in my centres are quite large. If we can have like an outdoor space for the educators as well, that they're not cramped in this tiny little space. I think for, and it sounds a bit sort of cliche, or you're looking for the educators, but really it's a business decision, because if you can create a centre that attracts the best educators within that catchment and keeps them, then you're going to have the centre that's full. And look, I think from our experience, the best centres and the most profitable centres are the ones that have the best educators. So you can have the fancy yards, and I think, that helps. You can have the nice receptions and all of this stuff you've got to have. But I think the educators are probably the most important part of any centre. And
educators are the heartbeat of a centre. And you talk about brass fittings and all that stuff, and I just think people may be wowed by that one time. It's kind of like driving, right? When you drive, you kind of see everything, but then when it becomes an everyday rhythm, you kind of forget all that stuff, and it really becomes what is the lifeblood of the centre. And it is the educators and the centre manager, and making sure we're thinking about that space. I mean, if from a design perspective, I really like big open windows to show that visibility, not closed in classrooms, and making sure, I mean, Barbie, you just laughed as well. I mean, how many times have you worked in a service and there's just no storage?
My last service was over 100 years old. It wasn't heritage listed, but it was like an old public school moved to another public school, so half falling down, very limited on what you could do, but it is what you do with the space. Although I think on an aesthetic, I do like the big open space, but on an acoustics and practicality, I understand the need for
Can I tell you where my first job was, Barbie? I don't think, Stefan, I've ever shared this. It was in Seaforth. I know, Barbie, you're in Sydney on Northern Beaches. For anyone listening around the country, Seaforth is kind of near Manly-esque. And it was in a big mason building, and every single day we had to pack away in the afternoon because the masons would use it after working hours, and then get to the centre and unpack and reset it. And it was in a massive, massive mason building hall with big, huge ceilings. And you want to talk about noise. It was noisy. Big space, and we would have to section out the spaces with trolleys and shelving, and then close it up and pack it away and put all the children's artwork away, and then set it up the next day. There was no such thing as storage, and there was no such thing as a space where children can come to that was predictable.
My first USH service was in a yurt, but it was like a yurt is just this kind of round building I don't know how many sides, and Stefan will know the better way to describe a yurt, but this round
I
building
don't think I
cost
do, to be
us.
honest.
Oh, really?
No,
It's just weird.
I think they're just
Where,
round. Aren't they like tents?
yeah, they're
Yeah.
kind of like a tent, but it's fixed. But where are you going to put storage in this round building? And also, it's almost like back then in the 90s or whenever some of these services got put on school grounds. It's like, oh, blah blah's got a free building. Let's just shove this on the school ground, and then you can do with it over time.
Oh, this reminds me of like a fest. I'm just Googling for everyone who's
And
listening.
it's like a festival tent,
It's a
but put
festival
it.
can. It really is. It reminds me of me
Oh,
going to some folk festival and
Or
camping
yeah,
out for a week.
it's still
yeah.
there too at that
Wow.
site.
I just picture going to South America to find yourself in yeah. It seems like something like that.
Hey,
Yeah.
but then that's where that you mentioned before. I did write. If you see me typing in, I type what you said. You mentioned something like it doesn't matter what it has. Well, it does in a sense of attracting great educators, but it's the educators that make the service a great service. So even
Yeah.
with a yurt, and I'm sure Jamie with your pack up, pack down Mason Hall, if you've got great educators like yourself, you just make it work.
I completely agree, and the educator is the most important thing. However, having said that, like everyone, it's like when you build your own house, you want to have, you want to build a nice house and you want to live in a nice house. If your
Agree.
first house that you buy, you buy whatever you can, and then you want to upgrade. And when you build your own house, you want to build a nice place. Like I think educators still appreciate when they have a new centre, the yard has a lot of money spent in. I mean, yards are pretty important.
Yeah.
We're spending big money. Sometimes, some of the operators is probably spending too much, but I think it's important to, have, a lot of real deep root vegetation. So you've got some nice trees in there. You've got, good playgrounds. It's nice inside. Look, some of the other items that we've seen good operators do, we like to have reception areas where there's actually, you can see the play space when you first walk in. A lot of operators like to have the kitchen open to that sort of reception area. So sometimes when mum, dad drop off the kids, they can get a coffee, those sorts of things. Like these are all some of the stuff that's coming in new centres, and I'm sure some of your educators probably work in those sorts of centres now, and some other people are working in centres that maybe aren't like that, but have a really good culture and really good kids and really good parents and love where they are and wouldn't change it for the world. So look, it's just a new centre. If you're going to build a new one, you might as well build it right from the start. And there's some of the things that we look at. And the staff room's a big one. Like we're pretty adamant that I've seen some older centres that have some of the most depressing little staff rooms that,
Mm.
it'd be nice to have them a little bit larger with a bit of a courtyard and something where when you have your break, you're actually away from everything that's going on. You're not being pulled back into it when you go and eat your lunch. You're in a nice quiet
You're
zone.
there in the background, hearing
Yeah,
everything. Yeah.
yeah,
That's if you have a staff room.
yes, yeah, exactly, yeah,
But
yeah,
I think they're important things. I think when educators walk through, that is something that people, while they might be excited to apply for a role, that they should also be looking out for, I think. So some hot tips when people are walking through, we sometimes think about it from the parent perspective, but educators, they very much are interviewing the centre as much as the centre is interviewing a candidate, right? Like making sure that you're doing a walkthrough, getting a vibe for the centre, not just sitting in the centre manager's office and keeping that interview there, but not actually seeing the workplace that educators might be working through. I also think, Stefan, a really great kitchen is important too. I mean, there's some pokey old kitchens out there, and you can barely even take a step and walk around, but I know for myself, the cook is really the heartbeat of a service, and a lot of services now are providing meals and food, and it really is on the same demand as a high end a cafe or restaurant. They're serving that amount of people per day, little people, of course. If you've got a service that's got about 100 hungry mouths plus the educators, that's a lot of people to kind of cater for.
yeah. The kitchens, I'd say probably almost every single centre we've done the kitchens. We're spending a lot of money on them, and they are something that would be appropriate in any commercial setting, probably more so than a cafe in a lot of instances.
And you touched on the yard as well. I mean, if I think about my own childhood, I don't know if I've never asked you about your childhood, but I know for myself, spending time outside, climbing trees, which maybe we want to be a bit safer in our centres. We don't want anyone falling out of trees. But my early happy memories of my childhood were being outdoors, not locked away inside classroom settings. And there are some really interesting ways that centres can have natural shading and have spaces where children can have this imaginative space and, have a sense of wonder and be around the natural environment as well. What's your take on the concepts of when developers or what you've done about the putting importance on outdoor spaces?
The importance with outdoor space would be, yeah, it's huge. It's huge. So a lot of the operators will see the outdoor space as a real selling point for their centre. So they're investing, huge money into the play spaces to make them an inviting area. We've seen everything from nature play to gone are the old days of the plastic, colourful playgrounds. And I think it's just become more and more competitive in that field because you go on a weekend, you can just drive around most growth areas and most new suburbs, and some of these playgrounds are absolutely amazing that the developers are putting in their sort of residential areas to try and attract people to buy a block of land in their estate, and those things are flowing into the childcare spaces. I think some of them probably have gone a little bit overboard. So I know of one with a helicopter in it.
I know a few cars.
Yeah, there's a lot of cars. There's a lot of cars. Look, I think we've seen everything. The sort of nature play stuff is pretty popular at the moment. For me, it's we can invest good money in the planting. So, or if you're lucky enough to find a site that already has established trees, try and keep those. From a licensing point of view, shade's pretty important. So, if you don't have those trees, you're going to have to replace them with shade sales. There's been a huge issues over in WA in particular with, without enough shade and having the fake grass can get pretty warm, and it's a big issue. So the more shade, the better, I think. But then at the same time, like sometimes I think about it like, you need shade, but the sun's pretty good in certain areas as well. You can't shade the entire playground. So I think it's a bit of a balance. But yeah, the play space is hugely important.
I was going to say, I know they've done it themselves, but there is a quite unique early learning or service I have nothing to do with, just admirer from afar over there in Perth, called Pachamama. I don't know if you've ever come across them, but if Jamie does a Google, when you say you've seen everything in a service, I would 100% bet if you look up that, there'll be just really obscure things.
Is it in the hills?
I don't know Perth well, so maybe.
Yeah, I think it might be.
They've got like sculptures.
Yeah.
They're crazy.
Is it in Lesmurdy, Jamie?
Pardon?
Are you Googling it?
I'm Googling it now, actually. Yeah.
I probably said it wrong, but sorry, no affiliation. But when you were just saying you've seen everything, I'm like, oh no, I'm sure you definitely see more. But I've been a long time admirer of what they do. Again, from afar, know nothing about them. It's just, and that's the thing. It's just a thing of what suits your community, and like you mentioned in the hills, they're probably more earthy. Yeah, that I think all the interiors all like second-hand, like rustic country farmhouse looking, but it suits where they are, and that necessarily won't work somewhere else.
Well, I mean, it could do. It's probably what the owners and educators kind of, that's their kind of idea and their link and their culture, so it works for them.
Yeah, well, Stefan, I mean, it's interesting because you talked about the history of, the plastic fantastic, which I'm glad we've all moved away from, to now we've got a lot more natural environments. I mean, how do you see the future of early learning centres developing over the next 5 to 10 years?
In regards to the play space, or just overall?
Just overall from a development.
Look, I think, you can talk to different operators. A lot of operators, every good operator thinks that they're doing it the best. That's one thing I've learned being in this space. And To be honest, like a lot of them are within their area. That's the thing. Like everyone learns from each other. I don't think there's any hard and fast rule. It's sort of, nice centres, built well, open areas, lots of natural light, good amenity for staff. Play space is obviously very important, but I don't think there's a rule for it. I mean, some people like nature play. I think
Mm.
nature play has been done to death a little bit, personally. I think it's kind of, there's nothing like a really cool fort for the kids, especially the kid, sort of 3-4-year-olds, if they've got a fort where they can climb up, get into. I think sometimes my personal opinion is we sort of get over licensed in a lot of spaces, not even just childcare, but there's this kind of, we've got to protect. So it's that hard balance, I suppose, of letting children explore and find their boundaries and find limits without getting in trouble for a child falling off something and getting hurt. So that's a really difficult thing. And I see a lot of operators struggle with that, where they're trying to push the boundaries, but then not, still get their license. So somewhere in between. I think the nature play is good. Lots of vegetation in that. In terms of the childcare centres, a lot of the other things we've spoken about. Easy parking's a big one as well. Like making sure that you've got enough staff parking, and it depends on your area, but there's a lot of mums that are dropping kids off that are driving Land Cruisers these days, and you want to make sure that your car park is quite large. The last thing you want is a tight car park, because if it's hard to get in, that can sometimes be enough to not send you to that childcare centre. So
Yeah.
I was going to say that because we went to a new build service with my first child for our first service, and the car parks were almost like 5 or maybe 10 centimeters too small, that even in a small SUV you couldn't fit. So it was just completely redundant having, like, just take out one car space, leave them all with a little extra room, and we would all have a lot better time instead of having to wait for the other person to come back. Because you're all trying to, like, especially if you're trying to get a baby, if you got one of the capsules, you're stuffed. You're not going anywhere.
You put 3 Land Cruisers next to each other, and there's not a lot of space. I know a lot of people that get anxiety of having to go and park somewhere where they're not comfortable with it. So the last thing you want is anyone thinking that it's a hard car park, because that may be enough to say, there's great educators, it's a great centre, but I just can't be bothered with it. It's too hard to get in and out.
I mean, this is really interesting conversation, Stefan. And, going from being a high school teacher into this space, like if there was someone else in the sector or out of our sector that might be considering to become a developer in early learning, what advice would you have for them?
Realistically, I mean, you got to just do it, I suppose. So if somebody wanted to do that and get into the space of development, you'd probably want to learn the basics of sort of putting a development together. So there's a lot of financing that you need to understand. Getting it's fine to find the site. You've got to get the site under contract for long enough. You've got to go get the approvals. So it's not there's a little bit of a process there. It's not none of it's super difficult. It's just doing it. Once you've done it, you understand it. It feels very, very complicated. It's like building a house, I suppose. When people first do it, it's quite a overwhelming experience. Development, I suppose, would be the same thing. So if somebody wanted to get out of childcare as an educator and go into development, you probably want to find a role where you could learn the development space where it's not your money to start with, and then maybe go into it and invest yourself and go through that process. I suppose from an educator's point of view, if you wanted to get into that space, you've got a very unique sort of insight into what is required to make a successful childcare centre. So, a lot of educators, I'm sure, would make very good developers. You'd just be learning the basics.
It would be interesting, wouldn't it? I mean, what's one of the most rewarding projects that you've worked on over your years?
Oh, you put me on the spot.
Of course.
We did. I suppose one was I convinced there's a huge need in a regional centre in Kalgoorlie for childcare. And we went to the YMCA, the WA branch, and convinced them. Went out to Kalgoorlie a couple of times, had 5 or 6 different sites that we thought worked. Then took the business development team and the operating team out there, drove them around, looked at all 6 different sites. They selected one, found a builders just before COVID, managed to build in Kalgoorlie, which we're very lucky we did it just before COVID, because if we did it any time after, it just would have almost been impossible. I think we had to get bricklayers to build the front facade of the building from South Australia because we couldn't get them from anywhere in Western Australia. So we had to fly bricklayers in from South Australia to Kalgoorlie to build the front facade of the building. And yeah, very difficult, but they opened that one. There's a huge need for it in the community. So it was great to just have the idea, pitch it to the operator, then agree with me, go and find the site, get the funding for it, and then actually deliver it. So yeah, I suppose that was probably one that was reasonably rewarding.
Yeah, wow, that is pretty rewarding. I can imagine. How are they tracking today? How are they doing?
I think they're doing. I think I haven't touched base with them in the last probably 12 months or so, but I think they're doing well. The hard thing out there is getting and retaining staff. So look, that's probably the difficulty. There was no problem with demand that they were crying out for it. It's just getting good educators and keeping good educators in Kalgoorlie when it's a mining town, when you might be able to go and work for the local gold company and maybe earn more money in reception than you do being an educator. So I suppose that maybe selects for the most passionate educators, but keeping them in Kalgoorlie is probably the difficult thing.
I reckon, Stefan, this has been such a great chat because I've worked with developers over my many years, and I guess for myself, as you know, I definitely have been in the operational space and really think about that side. I know, Barbi, you're the same when you with Firefly HR doing recruitment, and then when people apply for a role, explaining what the service looks like. So it's actually quite refreshing that this conversation has actually been about not just the design, but actually the concept of a developer actually considering what is the implications later downstream when the centres are actually opening. What do you reckon, Barbi?
Yeah, no, 100%. And one of the questions I proposed us before coming on this, which Stefan's already actually covered naturally, was I was going to ask, we talk a lot in recruitment about burnout and workload. From your perspective, how much can design reduce the pressure on staff? You've already covered that from the get-go, from the start, I find, but very heavy link. We hear a lot of what people are doing and why, like what's driving them to make their changes. It's always quite interesting. It's not actually always money driven, probably more so in COVID, which was odd, and less so now. I think there was lots of opportunities that presented in COVID, and it was like that dangling carrot. And then now there's been so much reflection on those. Yeah, we may be able to go get more money over here, but actually, no, at the end of the day, my passion, my joy, my fulfillment's over there. Yeah. It's like a pendulum swan that's like, I'm back here. And then it's just aligning themselves like we all do in our own businesses, but for educators, aligning themselves, it sounds cliche, but we do see it in a genuine way with approved providers that have similar values to them. And that's not saying that one and that one neither has a bad value, so just different. I'm a lot more casual, easygoing, down to earth. It'll be very different to work with someone that's a bit more opposite to me. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them or how that service may be run. Yeah, it's just we're all different, and we're meant to be in that diversity lens, what we're meant to encourage and embrace within a service. The same on the outside. This is me on my random tangent. I'm always conscious of it.
I love this. I call this the Barbie reflection.
Oh, no. No. It was like I didn't realise either. Like I'd asked that at the start, and then hearing Stefan naturally just talk about it, it's like, yeah, it does place a huge part in how educators can feel. Because there's those little nuances that they pick up throughout the day. And I know when we get a recruitment brief on a job, especially if it's just the recruitment team for the company, they kind of give you just the job specifics, like the pay, maybe the location. And then I'm like, I actually ask, no, where's the kitchen? How old's the building? What access do they have? Is there parking? Is there more than one? Can they go after hours? And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, this is stuff everyone thinks about
No,
when they're
it's so
going for a
right.
job.
You know what I was thinking is you're saying just the list, because you kind of think about this when you start. It's like, I mean, you don't even think about it until you need it. It's like where the PowerPoints are. How many are there in a classroom? Where can you
Yeah,
put your stuff? Like they're so important.
yeah,
Yeah, look, we spent uh yeah, months and months and months on this sort of stuff with operators. So and look, the good operators are thinking about all of this stuff,
Mm,
and they genuinely have, you know, there's obviously a profit part to all of this, and they want to
mhm.
make sure that it's a successful center from that perspective. But really, like the educators and the children, you know, if parents feel like they're getting, you know, a good education and for their children that they're sending to the center, and there's a lot of passion there from parents when they feel like they've got a not, you know, a center. Like word of mouth is probably the most important thing up a centre.
Yeah.
Um, and really, that comes from creating a nice space that the educators appreciate, and that flows on through. And you know, everyone wins if it's a nice space. It's got quality educators. They're delivering quality education. It kind of just works.
And I
Um,
think it just touched on something that was interesting, which is about profitability, right? So I think there's a lot of stuff in the media about profiteering over quality. But I've worked for the non for profit sector, I've worked for the YMCA, I've worked for parent committees in non for profit in school centres. And I know, Barbie, you have as well. But even the non for profits and the government agencies and all of those different spaces still need to make a profit to ensure people are being paid and the centre can continue to reinvest back into the building. So it is an interesting topic. And I'm curious, Stefan, what your take is on that.
Yeah, look, it's just the way the world works. Like I think it's, you know, there's limits to it, and you definitely have seen some operators that probably shouldn't be in the space, and that's something that you'd hope the regulators will crack down on, and I think they definitely are with all the, you know, the recent things in the news and things like that. So that's probably a good thing for the industry.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, like it you know, these centres need to be built. They cost a lot of money to build. You know, some of the childcare centres that we're currently building are, you know, start from 3 million and can go well over $5, $6, $7 million just the building. That doesn't include the land. That doesn't include all your costs to get the approval. So it's not a cheap exercise to go and build a quality building with a nice play space. I mean, some of these play spaces are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like it's, you know, to create something that looks amazing, that creates, you know, the kids love, and the educators love to be in and around. Um, you know, it all flows through. So I, I see the point, and you know, you definitely don't want to see this be taken advantage of, and that doesn't actually suit. It's not a sustainable model for anyone. But yeah, like it is the starting point, and you know, you want to build a nice centre, and you want to make sure that it serves the educators, and it all flows from there.
and that my background's entirely not for profit. When working in out of school hours care, early learning, and I've done profit and all that. But I think at the end of the day, it's a business. So I know we were in dire straits for a while, especially in the community-based not-for-profit. But you're still a business. You have to pay your BAS, I hate BAS, your wages, like all of that. That doesn't
Yeah,
go away, and you still need to make that income, pay your bills, pay your rent, pay the resources. And I think they sometimes there's that conception of what a budget might need to be in a not-for-profit.
I, yeah,
I don't think it's any different between the two. You're both pretty much paying exactly the same bills
yeah.
and expenses and everything on that side. Otherwise, you can't run.
Barbie, what do you think in the out of school care space? How do you think that services, so primarily still run out of schools, primarily like the
It depends on your state. every state works differently, especially in the public school system, in how they tender. I'm not sure what's happening over there at the moment, but I know in New South Wales we've had a few changes. But the goal, I believe, a couple of years ago, that the Premier for our state wanted an OSH in every school site, so invested. I'm going to get my numbers wrong. I think it was 120 million, something like this, and actually did hubs, purpose-built OSH hubs. Services could actually apply to get one. The only problem is department being department, and I thought they were great when they did it. It's like hardly anyone applied for them.
Yeah, okay.
You have this free building. You don't need your 100-year-old old building like I had, or your dingy basement underneath some old classroom. But the plan was good. I am seeing, and I'm a parent, so I understand the need, where no matter where you live, whether rural or not, it opened a lot of services in rural small schools, but then the viability is not there. So I think on a government lens, and I'm sure this will happen in every state, they need to support more if they want these services in school grounds viability, not just an initial, here, have this. Viability is ongoing. You can't keep a service running with 5 kids. But otherwise, we see a lot on school grounds. Predominantly,
I think whether there's an avenue for the private sort of private developers in the space.
It's tricky.
It's
tricky because children have to go to a school.
Yeah.
That's where they go. Obviously, right? And I used to do an after-school care program, and we would go get a bus. We would pick up the children from the school and take them to an offsite. And based on all the
it's hard, eh?
Well, you'd get to the space around 4 p.m. and so then you do your afternoon tea, and then maybe there's a bit of play experiences, or if children want us to do homework, there would be that, and then the parents would pick up about that 5:30 time. So really, they're only in that space for about an hour. And I'm a big advocate for children having uninterrupted playtime after a structured learning of an entire day. To lots of research around brain development with that, and play and leisure, rather than doing lots of extracurricular activities. It can be a challenge.
Yeah.
There's a lot to consider about the location of where those sites are. There's limitations, I think.
It's Crown land too, so and it's changed a lot, especially when I was running a service, what you could and couldn't do. It used to be a lot more like, I know I needed a new roof at one point, and it's like, yeah, you just get a new roof, whereas now the amount of loopholes you have to go through and approvals to get a new roof, and you have to use someone approved by, because I was on a public school land. But that is always changing, that landscape.
My thing was with just more if there is a place for higher quality buildings and play spaces and areas, but it would have to be, for the private sector to get involved, it would have to be done off site, and then you would have to locate it in a spot that serviced 2 or 3 schools and solve the problem of getting students off site to the area. But I think if you could structure it in the right way, you could create centres and spaces that were much more specifically designed for the purpose that is, after school care, which maybe has quiet rooms, maybe has really good play space, and is safer. It's not always in that after school area where it might just be an assembly area or a demountable, and also just getting the kids out of school, like once they've finished school, like getting, like, they don't feel like they've been at school from, if mum and dad have to go to work early and they get dropped at school at 7 o'clock and then they're there till 6 o'clock.
No, I agree. And even often those children are there for the holidays, for vacation care. So they're there 7 to 6, 50, 51 weeks of a year, pending what the service close. And myself today, I'm working from home, and I haven't been working from home in a long time. Just blending the environment of where you relax and work. And that's what it can be like for children if they're in the same settings. I know that pack up, pack down services, there's only so much you can do on school site. But then I also know having your own space and being able to provide that home-like environment with minimal interruptions, such as we may have had a child sick, like a stomach bug. Yes, we could send them to the school sick bay in the morning, or we know mum's going to be there in 40 minutes. I'd rather them be comfortable on the lounge. We can have a video on for them. They're not rushed around with everything that happens in a school. Like, there's just those little nuances that we could cater for. And at the end of the day, that there's the two-way knock-on of that child's experience is better, and also the educator. They're less stressed. They're probably going to feel less burnt out from trying to figure out how that's all going to occur. Whereas if you've got that space and the means and everything, you can just make it happen. Like there's less second guessing yourself probably.
I think this is great. So Stefan, give us your future. Like if you had a crystal ball, where will Stefan be, or where would Jarra be in the next, X amount of time? What give us.
Look, I'm not sure. We're pretty focused on our recent trust that we've launched, which is the Jarra Childcare Trust. So we're looking to combine property, childcare property with a high quality operator being Early Learning Collective. We're looking to roll out some centres in Western Australia, Sydney, New South Wales, potentially Queensland, really across the nation. So that's probably what we'll be focusing on for the next 5 at least years. After that, who knows, maybe I'll go back to teaching.
That sounds
no plans for that. I haven't taught for a long time. I don't know how I would go.
Yeah, I'm the same.
Yeah, I could still do. I think I could still do the Year 12 biology course on a whiteboard in 10 hours. I was pretty good at it about 10 years ago. So,
okay.
Give me a couple of weeks, and I reckon I could get back into the swing of that.
Yeah.
But with AI and everything these days, I'm not sure the kids would want to copy down the notes that I'm just writing on the board anymore.
Well, I reckon it's really interesting that you're going to be diving into a space where there's property and the operations coming together as one. What a unique offering, and so exciting for the Jarra Group and what that looks like. So watch this space, I guess.
Yeah, really excited with that. We feel like it's a missing puzzle. You've got a lot of developers and a lot of people floating around just doing the property, and then operators just doing the business. And yeah, we're combining both of those. We think it's pretty powerful, and yeah, we're excited about it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I guess we're going to start wrapping up a little bit. We covered so much. We covered so much around design, property, concepts, best practice, what we would like to have if we had a magic wand, and some lessons learned by yourself, Stefan. So thank you so much. But as we wrap up, I mean, Barbie gets to ask the final question to each podcast.
And I'm always really bad at asking this. No, it has nothing to do ever with what we talk about. It is, what was your first ever live performance, such as a music gig, festival? Not everyone likes music, we've learned, so it could be even movie, theatrical.
I'll give you an interesting one. So this is, Jamie, you wouldn't know this, but I was probably about 7 years into teaching, and the Year 12 selected me to do their final farewell speech. And I did, so the teachers would get up in front of, all the parents and all the kids and give us a speech. And I decided that I had to do something a little bit different for the Year 12. So I did a speech in a suit. Oh, wow. And then there was a running joke that I looked like someone from a 70s music video, which I'll show you one day, Jamie.
Okay.
In a white like full-blown leotard, and my homeroom kids ripped my suit off, and then I did a song and dance routine with backup Year 10 dancers for a song at each, the number one song for each year that the Year 12s are at school. So
wow.
Can't remember what the songs was. I think it was Taylor Swift, Justin Bieber, the Canadian singer, I can't remember her name, and then finished with a rap from Macklemore and changed all the words to suit the kids. So
you were the performance.
I was the performance, yeah.
We haven't had that, Barbie.
I'll send you the video. I'll send you the video, Jamie. You'll like that. It's pretty. Oh yeah, that was about 15 years ago. So
wow.
That's a pretty interesting one.
I think
that needs to be sent.
Yeah. I need to elaborate my question now to or you being the performer too.
Yeah.
I thought it just popped into my head to start with, so I thought that's a pretty interesting one. Yeah.
Well, once again, great podcast, great guest. I mean, I'm really pumped about the next couple of guests that we've got coming on board, and really thinking about different people in our sector that helps to influence the classroom environment for our educators and owners of early childhood and outside of school hours services. So thanks, Stefan, and great to see you, Barbie. I can't wait till next week.
Lovely chatting, everyone. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Barbie. Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks for listening to The Bold Blueprint.
If you'd like to get in touch, you can reach out to us on
elm.net.au or
fireflyhr.com.au.
Bye.